Bruce, you must have something really good too.
Of course I do. It's Bruce Danielson, and I guess I'm here to entertain you too.
So again, welcome to the informational meeting of July 27th, 2021. First up on our agenda is item number 2, which is our committee and commission reports. Our first report is the IM26 task force, and I will cover that. So I'm going to cover our third and final meeting, which was on the 21st last week. So very quickly, just to get everybody up to speed, there's really 5 separate jurisdictions that we have to address, which is we, or our partners, I should say, Lincoln County's unincorporated area, Minnehaha County's unincorporated areas, our 2 joint zoning areas, which for the audience, the city and the county share a joint jurisdictional zoning boundary, which is essentially about 3 miles outside of the city of Sioux Falls in a ring that both bodies, the county and the city, have to vote on. And then the city of Sioux Falls incorporated limits. So really, this is oversimplifying a bit, but our categories of authority at a local level based on IM26 is zoning, which is really where businesses can be located. Licensing, what rules would they have to follow, what fees would you have to pay for a license, and then nuisance and health, which primarily has been things like smoking and consumption in public. And again, city and counties have joint zoning authority, which means that we both have to agree on zoning laws, but as it relates to nuisances and health, for example, smoking regulations, anything outside of city limits is under the county's control. Whatever they pass is what the rules are. Anything inside of the city is what the rules are, and there's no joint licensing as well. Anything outside of city limits, you would have to get a license from that particular county, and then you would have to meet the zoning. And inside the city, we have our own licensing as well that we'd have to pass. So as most of you know, the state has to promulgate rules by October 29. Once those rules are promulgated, someone can apply for a license from the state. If the local jurisdiction has licensing and zoning laws, those have to be followed, and those have to be certified that they've been followed first. So essentially, if a local government wants to have rules in place, they have to get those in place by the time rules are promulgated. Right now, the timeline is October 4th. The Department of Health has indicated that those rules will probably be in force, and so we're kind of using October 1st as kind of our date that we'd like to have our laws in force. As many know, we established a pause or a moratorium, as did many cities and counties, on accepting any license applications for businesses until those rules are promulgated and we can get rules in force. The exception is Minnehaha County enacted a pause that extends 60 days beyond rules promulgation. So they may not be accepting applications for licenses until maybe around December. That could change, but as of right now, that is the timeline that they have set. So the timeline essentially is for the city of Sioux Falls next Wednesday, Planning Commission, August 4th for the zoning ordinance, and then there would be first readings on August 17th on the city zoning, licensing, and health regulations, whatever we would choose to move forward with, and then the second reading would be September 7th, which would make the effective dates, if all of those dates hold, of October 1st. Lincoln County already has a temporary zoning ordinance in place. They have 1 year to enact a permanent zoning ordinance, or they could renew it for 1 more year. Licensing and health, they're looking to adopt this Thursday, the 29th, and those would be effective by September 1st or so and enforced. In Minnehaha County, they've passed a smoking and consumption ban last week, and they have licensing and zoning in progress that they're writing. As stated, they do have some extra time to get that done, so it may be in the next few months. As far as the joint jurisdictions, they run a pretty similar timeline and reasonably similar to what the cities are. They'd start coming forward in August. You can see those dates for the 2 different counties to the joint planning commissions, and then there would be first readings and second readings through the city of Sioux Falls and those joint counties. The meetings would be held either here or potentially in Canton. It depends on what we end up scheduling and what works out for all of our schedules. So again, the effective dates of those would run into September or even October for Minnehaha, but again, since they wouldn't issue licenses until December, that timeline would still hold and work for the issuance of licenses and the state rules. So the goals of the task force, as we talked about it, was to try to find consistency where possible between the 3 different jurisdictions. understand where each of us were headed, share knowledge, define the timelines and the process to adopt the various ordinances. As you saw, there's a lot of different things that we have to get done in a certain amount of time. Come up with the framework for our joint ordinances, use those discussions to guide the development of individual local ordinances, and find out what other cities in the counties are doing. For the most part, the smaller communities are looking to us to see what we do, and they have pauses in place in some cases, and then gather public input and suggestions. So the general direction, Lincoln County is the farthest along. They're looking at restricting locations based on separation distances to schools and daycares. They have no numerical license limits. They are allowing all 4 uses: cultivation, manufacturing, testing, and dispensaries. I believe they're looking at a smoking and/or consumption prohibition this Thursday. I don't remember. I'm not sure what the details of that are. And they have a fee structure that they're going to be bringing forward, I think, in maybe the $50,000 to $100,000 range, but that's been a little fluid, and I haven't had a chance to see their ordinance. They've been what I would call the most flexible of the 3 jurisdictions. Minnehaha County is the least farthest along. They have established that smoking and consumption ban. Right now, they're planning to allow only 1 use of the 4, which would be a dispensary. They may enact a numerical license limit. I don't know if they've determined whether they're going to do that or not. And they would have separation distances to certain uses, some sort of sensitive uses. And they are just planning to start very conservative and restricted in general. The City of Sioux Falls zoning ordinance is being finalized. That would be, like I said, coming forward next week. You'll see it on an agenda by 4 o'clock online on Friday. License and health ordinances are in progress. We would be looking to allow 1 use to start, a dispensary. There'd be, as of right now, likely no numerical limit on licenses, but zoning would restrict the number based on the separation distances. Looking at a separation distance of 1,000 feet to each other and to sensitive uses allowed in commercial zones. Again, starting a little bit more conservative and restrictive, and I would say cautious. In the joint areas, they'll be mostly similar. The one major difference would be that Lincoln would allow all 4 uses, the Lincoln joint area, which would be the area just outside of city limits down in the Lincoln County area, whereas Minnehaha would just allow dispensaries. And really that's reflective of kind of where each of the county commissions are, kind of like where they want to start. So, and it should be noted that the joint zoning ordinances have to pass both the city and the county. They can't pass one or the other. They have to pass both to go in effect. So there has to be compromise on both ends. So next steps again, next week, August 4th, the Planning Commission. The city is working to generate maps for the public, which would depict where the uses could go given the proposed regulations. I think the maps will be very helpful to visualize and see what the effect of a given separation distance would be. License and health regulations would be probably online by Friday, August 13th for the meeting that would come on the 17th. And the license and the health would probably mostly relate to things like smoking and/or consumption in public, the same thing that you've seen in other jurisdictions. And all of those ordinances would be moving forward through August into September for an effective date, hopefully, of October 1st. But of course, dates can move, things can be deferred or amended. So, and I think that's it. So, lengthy report, but there was a lot to go over. So, any questions, comments before we move on to the next one? Councilor Starr.
Yes, just so everyone in the room that's here for this knows that we're going to take public input at the end of the meeting, and they'll have 3 minutes to speak. We're probably hearing from Dr. Chima's group first in the health department. Just so that you understand, you'll have 3 minutes to offer your input on this item.
And thank you for clarifying that. Yes, at the end of our meetings, we take 3 minutes of public input from,
Is it 5?
actually 5,
Sorry.
excuse me, 5. Yep, that 5 minutes at the informationals. From anybody who'd like to speak on any subject that we talked about, and since we talked about IM26, your input will be welcome after the vector control update. Anything else? Okay, with that, we're going to move on. We have a multicultural center board update from Councilmember Starr.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. It a little bit quicker, won't go quite as deep. Couple of things that we're dealing with at the Multicultural Center Board is that, first of all, the audit has been completed for the last year. There were no major changes or concerns. The 990 form is completed and was being circulated for signatures, and we'll get an updated, or the board will get an updated copy of that. The other thing that's interesting is that with having a temporary CEO, her contract, Lori Knutsen's acting as the executive director through the end of October. So shortly we'll be in the selection process of hiring a new executive director. What makes it tougher is the board is not really set priorities for the future. So we're still in that process of deciding what do we need in a new executive director, what background do they need? Do they need to have more financial fundraising, or do they need to be more program oriented, or do you want staff to take program lead, I guess is a better way of looking at it. The other thing is, because of fundraising and funds, the after-school program that the Multicultural Center has done in the past is going to be put on a pause, at least for this school year. Again, determining where we go with an executive director, what other groups are doing, and what really in an after-school program do we need. For me, it takes the blue buses off of the road, and it gets us back into one of the points of controversy with that group at different points, where what shape the transportation system was in that they were using to bring kids back and forth from different schools across the city. So taking a pause and readjusting that program was difficult. There were a few employees, part-time employees that won't have a position this fall, but I think it's really going to be good for the organization to take a look at what they're doing and really start from scratch of what the mission and goal of the group is. And with that, that's probably the biggest things that are going on, and just being able to partner with other community groups that are doing similar things so that we're not duplicating services. So in a short amount of time, we're gonna put together a new master plan and a vision for the organization, and then lead off with a new executive director sometime late this fall, early this winter. So
Very good.
thank you.
Thank you. Any questions or comments? Anyone who wants to speak for up to 5 minutes on anything we talked about today, I'm going to welcome to come forward. And before you start, Emmett, I just want to let everybody know we want to hear your input. Just keep it to 5 minutes. We do have a timer up there that will run and show you when you're 30 seconds away with a yellow light, and when you're out of time, it'll be at red. I'm going to make sure to enforce that because we have a lot of people here. And if you can try not to be too repetitive, that would be appreciated, but we want to hear what you have to say. So take it away, Emmett.
All right, thank you, Counselor. I think most of you know me. My name is Emmett Reisstroffer. I reside at 915 South 4th Avenue. For the members who may be attending virtually, I just want to mention there's probably 30 to 40 people attending today, I think, with similar interest in this topic. Definitely an interesting issue. I'm grateful for the opportunity to provide public input. I'm grateful for the work of the task force. However, I have to be honest, I'm disappointed in the direction that we're going. Based off of the draft ordinances that I picked up at that last third meeting, what is being proposed by Councilor Neitzert and Mayor TenHaken is unfortunately the most restrictive zoning ordinance for cannabis businesses that I've seen anywhere in the United States, having worked in several states over the course of 10 years. From my perspective, having attended multiple meetings, having provided feedback, providing examples, providing a draft ordinance, answering questions about my industry, I just can't see how these proposals are honestly or reasonably a reflection of the process that I've been part of, or any democratic process. For those reasons, I'm not just concerned about bad policy, I'm concerned about our government not being responsive to the people. Let me start with policy. First and foremost, it's bad policy because it's unlawful. SDCL 34-20G-57 reads, no local government may prohibit a dispensary, either expressly or through the enactment of an ordinance that makes the operation of a dispensary impracticable. When you unreasonably restrict the legal market from participating, inescapably it's going to be sold in the illicit market. We're talking about up to hundreds of millions of dollars untaxed, unregulated, right here in our own community. But you have an opportunity to drive out that illicit market. The voters asked you to drive out that illicit market. You have partners here today, myself and others in the industry, who have a successful track record working with numerous other governments across the country. And now we have a multi-billion-dollar industry active in nearly 20 states with a successful track record following the law, staying compliant, paying our taxes on time, etc. We want to be good partners here in Sioux Falls too and bring this market above ground. We want production and sales to be transparent. It should be licensed and taxed. Our products should be tested for quality and safety. But by blocking us out, you're clearing the way for the illicit market to generate millions of dollars unlicensed, untaxed, and without any testing of their products. Furthermore, some of you may have concerns about home grows. I personally do not, but I've heard it many times at these meetings. This ordinance guarantees a proliferation of home grows in our community by banning commercial cultivation and restricting retailers into the boondocks or out of existence. There won't be an adequate supply to meet demand, so most people will resort to growing cannabis at home. Those who can't can appoint a caregiver. All you need is a letter from a doctor, and any Sioux Falls resident can get permission to grow an unlimited number of plants in their residence, in their garages, in their backyards, etc. That's state law in effect right now. It won't take more than another 12 months if we don't have a handful of accessible legal dispensaries. Instead, we'll have a handful of grow equipment stores and thousands of homes in the city where people are growing their own medicine. It doesn't make sense to me, despite your own concerns, why you would want to incentivize that. So in summary, it's bad policy because it's a continuation of prohibition, it's a continuation of the illicit market, and would allow proliferation of home grows. However, this isn't just bad policy, I think it's bad government. We know where the voters spoke on this issue, almost 80% in support. Let me repeat, this is not good government. Good government is responsive government. I believe in it, I've been part of it. I've been in work groups and task force in other places. I've even served as a municipal official. So I believe you know where the voters stand. What I'm ultimately asking you to do today is to have a zoning ordinance that zones cannabis businesses, but what's being proposed is a de facto ban. I've searched over 50 locations on Google Maps, only 2 of which could meet the criteria. One is out by the sewage treatment facility. The other one's behind the airport. That is not reasonable. You have one job, that is to regulate time, place, and manner within the confines of state law and with direction from voters. So with that, I said I've been part of the meetings. My question to you is, no churches have showed up and asked for this. No daycares have showed up and asked for this. Who's asking for it? I think it's pretty obvious. It's Mayor Paul TenHaken and the administration. I don't want this to become political. I've had a good experience working with stakeholders, attending the meetings. We shouldn't let it turn into a political debate. Again, we've already debated and decided this issue. Let's do something reasonable. So specifically, I'm out of time. I just want to ask that you remove the setbacks on single dwelling residences and remove the setbacks on parks and churches, or at minimum, reduce those distances so we can open up Minnesota Avenue, 41st Street, places where people will have locations that are accessible, convenient, and familiar to them. Treat it like medicine, please. That's all I ask. I'm out of time. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you, Emmett. Anybody else who'd like to speak on this subject? Come forward, sir. You could just give us your name.
My name is Jason Karimi. So I've been a cannabis activist for about 10 or 12 years. Emmett touched briefly on politics. I want to talk about law. You guys are working in Iowa. I sent a letter to the South Dakota Department of Education concerning that the Iowa Department of Public Health wrote 4 federal government agencies, one of which was the Department of Education, addressing the same topics that were outlined in Rule Article 2480 that you guys were discussing a few weeks ago. They didn't write just one letter. The state of Iowa wrote 4 letters to 4 different federal departments, including the Department of Education. Iowa also wrote a statement of intent concerning these 4 letters. At the time that I wrote this letter, it was for a meeting with South Dakota's Department of Education on May 17th of 2021. So I'd like to respectfully draw attention to members of the Sioux Falls City Council and other interested parties in the community as to these 4 Iowa letters, as we're writing these laws, that federal exemptions to state medical cannabis laws are currently found in the Code of Federal Regulations. We do not need to wait on Congress to change federal law. It's up to the states to lead on changing federal law. That's how this whole issue works. The federal government has not sued a single state to shut down the medical cannabis programs. However, in Maine of this year, federal funding was denied to certain facilities due to federal regulations, okay? So to protect the medical cannabis community, I'd like to urge anyone in South Dakota willing to work with me on this issue to do as not only Iowa, but the state of Hawaii did this year, to pass laws. In Hawaii, it was House Concurrent Resolution number 132, and also a House Resolution number 112. House Resolution 112 is more detailed on the law. It gets into Title 21 of the Code of Federal Regulations, Section 1308.43, whereas the other Hawaii bill, House Concurrent Resolution 132, leaves out Section 1308.43, and instead discusses Title 21 of the Code of Federal Regulations, Section 1307.03. So here's what this comes down to. I'm going to ask nicely that the lawmakers protect me and other patients from the federal government by following Hawaii and Iowa, and filing a letter of intent saying we want federal funding guarantees at our facilities and nursing homes and schools. And if that doesn't happen, I'll take legal action with my network, which is nationwide and very good at doing the right thing for the people. So please work with us or we'll take you to court. I'm not with any organization. This is me as a medical cannabis patient alone. I live here in Sioux Falls. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Jason. Others who'd like to provide input today? Come forward, sir. Welcome.
Good afternoon, all. My name is Matt Jorgensen. I am the Chief Executive Office of Cannabis Chem Labs, and I am here today to talk to you on a little bit of a different tact on this topic, and that is the testing. One of the things that you have glossed over in all of this is that you're focusing on dispensaries, however, you're not focusing on public safety. The testing of this material is what we do at Cannabis Chem Labs. A little bit about my background, I come at it from the public safety standpoint. I spent 18 years in law enforcement as a forensic scientist. I've run 2 different crime labs, and that is what I'm applying to Cannabis Chem Labs, is that transparency and that public safety driven focus on following the rules. We want that certificate of analysis to mean something. We want these patients to have the safety and the ability to do so. And by not allowing testing facilities in the city of Sioux Falls, you're pushing us out, to use Emmett's term, the boondocks, where qualified talent, chemists that we're going to want to hire are not necessarily going to want to live. We want our tax base to stay in Sioux Falls. We want you to be able to benefit from our availability as far as testing goes, and to make sure that we are providing the highest quality of product to the patients themselves. Because after all, that is what this ordinance is all about, is about public safety. The rest of my time, I'm available for questions at any time. Again, this is my background, this is my passion as a chemist, so I will make myself available. Thank you.
Thank you, Matt. Anyone else who'd like to give public input? Welcome, Rose.
Hello.
How are you?
Good.
Good.
Rose Grant. I'm here, my husband and I, we have a Wheelchair Express, and we have a number of our riders who live downtown, the Tower David and Beetle Plaza and the Y. And the way this ordinance is written, there will be no dispensaries downtown. There's not going to be any dispensaries on the bus routes. I really wonder how that's going to work. There's not going to be any way to give them the product without getting them in the building. If there's no drive-through, no pass-through. I think that these restrictions are just way too much. I would, from my office, I can see a liquor store, I can see a daycare, I can see a casino, and I can see a place where they're serving beer. And none of this has come to fruition, that it's all gone to hell. So anyway, and as a person who has some commercial properties, I don't like being boxed out of this new business. I mean, Center City needs to have the business if we're going to keep up our stuff. So I would ask that you relook at these. Thank you.
Thank you, Rose. Others? Welcome.
Welcome. My name is Chris Lee. I'm just a citizen of Sioux Falls. I'm not with any entities of any kind. But my real question is why aren't you guys embracing this? Why are we hiding everything? What is the reason for it? I mean, if you've done your work, if you know about medical marijuana or marijuana period, I don't know how you can come up with these decisions that you need to hide it. You don't hide clinics. You don't hide liquor stores. You don't hide bars. The only thing you hide is a strip joint out on by the interstate someplace. And this is something good. You should embrace this. I mean, it's nothing bad about this. I'm 60-some years old, and my wife has got issues, and she uses cannabis, but for many years she had to use it illegally. I don't know why you're hiding it. I don't know why you're restricting it. I don't understand it. And can anybody answer that question? What is the reason for that? Really, I don't understand, unless people are informed. You should be embracing it. You should be doing the best you can. There should be dispensaries where people have access to it. You don't have to hide it. The future is here. It's not going to go away. It's not going to stop. 20 years from now, it's going to be completely different. It'll probably be you can go down to the farmer's market and buy it. But there's no reason to not embrace what is right. And if you restrict it to one entity, then you're restricting economic fairness for everybody. The bottom line is you can put it in one hand and he can make all the money and he can buy his house and his boat in Florida, or you can put it in 20 hands that'll build their house and put the money right back in the Sioux Falls economy. It's not hard to figure out. The future is here. It's not going anywhere. It's only going forward. You have a chance to do something real. You have a chance to do something good. And you need to stand on your own feet and believe in what you're doing and research it and understand it completely. This is nothing we need to hide. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Others? Welcome.
Good afternoon. My name is Seth Pierman. I'm the Attorney General for the Flanders Santee Sioux Tribe, but I also live in Sioux Falls, so I'm also a citizen. So let's make that note. Obviously, the Flanders Santee Sioux Tribe has been engaged in the marijuana industry for some time. It currently operates a medical marijuana program on its reservation and has been doing so successfully. We have over 2,000 registered patients, and they are able to get marijuana products in a timely, orderly fashion. Those products are safe, and they are great for the people who really need them. I think when we're looking at this, we need to look at not necessarily a method to restrict business, but to enhance the ability of patients to get medicine. The biggest impact that I see in this is that based on the overall aspect of eliminating all of these other ancillary businesses, which are not common in other state ordinances, like your churches and your daycares, those sorts of things, it might actually be good for us because I'm not sure that any place in Sioux Falls can open a dispensary and successfully operate. But the tribe has always intended to make products available to everybody and therefore would obviously like to participate in the Sioux Falls market. If you look back at the guidance from the Department of Justice that was issued in 2014 called the Cole Memo, which I know you've probably all read by this point, the first tenet that it laid out was that it said that it must have, sorry, my notes, it must prevent the distribution of marijuana to minors. And in doing so, we think that it does make sense to include schools in your zoning ordinance, but it does not make sense for all of the other, churches and that sort of thing. This is also reiterated in Federal Law 21 USC 860, which is titled "The Distribution or Manufacturing in or Near Schools and Colleges," which is created the 1,000-foot distance and enhancement of criminal penalties for individuals who were selling controlled substances within those specific zones. Makes sense. We don't want kids to have these products. So we would suggest that that would be the exact method that this would follow and that we'd remove those other provisions. In the event that there is a 1,000-foot requirement between dispensaries, we think that you may be inviting litigation. It's challenging to develop lottery systems or first file type operations for dispensaries within 1,000 feet of each other. I know there are people and businesses who own property in Sioux Falls who would intend to use those properties for this venture, and it would not be fantastic for us to be fighting each other to open dispensaries in property that businesses already own. Secondarily, in the event that this does arise and people do get dispensary licenses, there should be almost a method to prove that they have the ability to sell marijuana. Everybody is, I'm sure you've got a lot of calls about this, have constantly said, we want to get a dispensary going. We want to get this dispensary. What do I need to do to get that? Well, to have a dispensary, you need to have marijuana. And although there's not cultivation in Minnehaha County, there are other places where there will be cultivation. So we do need to keep in mind that if you're issuing a license to a dispensary that doesn't have the ability to source marijuana, it's a wasted license and could end up having somebody who actually does have the ability to sell marijuana from selling that to products or selling those products to customers. Again, I think that if we focus this on really taking away the recreational aspect, because this almost seems like a recreational bill to me. If we look at really having access of marijuana to the people who really, truly need this medicine, we don't want somebody living in downtown having to drive to, drive down to Minnesota to get medicine. It should be something that's accessible, that they can get in a timely manner, and that it's affordable to them. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Seth. Others who'd like to give input today? Lisa, nice to see you again.
Hello, how are you? Lisa Nolan, just speaking on my behalf and looking to talk about just the overregulation. We know that oftentimes overregulation and overtaxing hurts the businesses and it hurts consumers, in this case, patients. So I just urge you to have common sense type of regulation. One of the things that we see here is an opportunity to create a legal marketplace, and that legal marketplace can help small businesses thrive, and it can also help patients and consumers. So I just encourage you to continue looking at less regulation and look at some common sense type of things, but oftentimes it's that overregulation that causes harm. Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. Others who'd like to give input today? Welcome you to come forward.
Good afternoon, councilors. Thank you for taking public input today. To be really blunt, my name is Christopher Reistroffer. I'm sure you heard from my brother a couple minutes ago. I think some of the reasons that individuals like him are very passionate is because of cannabis patients like myself. Openly, I think a few of you as council members know me as a respectable, honest, community-engaged civil servant. Someone that cares about the growth of Sioux Falls, that cares about our children, that cares about our churches, that cares about our schools, someone that's actively involved. When Emmett talks about patients and making marijuana readily available to patients like myself, we're not necessarily trying to promote something that has relations to shenanigans or to I think a hidden lifestyle that I think the council members, with some of the opinions that you're sharing, moves medicinal cannabis into that section. And I say that as someone, when I was 23 years old on 41st Street, in front of the Timber Lodge, I was riding my motorcycle and I was run over by a van. I literally had to go through multiple surgeries, and to this day, even in the back, I struggle to sit because of my damaged T12. As a dual resident of Sioux Falls in Las Vegas, Nevada, I've had the opportunity to consume marijuana in an environment that does not question my moral compass or my moral code. by all definitions, I'm a Boy Scout. I make my bed. I don't drink alcohol. I don't smoke cigarettes. I'm very dedicated to my physical health, and I really pay attention to making sure that we keep substance in general away from minors and individuals that can utilize it as a poison, something to harm themselves. But I encourage you as council members to really think about, when we're putting these zoning laws together, is it appropriate for someone like me that sits in pain 24 hours a day, someone that wakes up multiple times a night because I have to change my body's position because my pain in my back is so damaging that I can't think through it. For me, trying to avoid substance, when I had my accident, I was prescribed oxycodone, and because I wasn't thinking about speaking, I'm forgetting the other medication that I was given. But what I will tell you, council members, those pills that I was prescribed by my doctors in South Dakota, they made me dizzy, they destroyed my stomach, it dramatically impacted my ability to eat, which affected anxiety, it affected depression, you name it, that all spawned from my accident. Now, I have learned in living in other communities as a dual resident of Sioux Falls, such as Las Vegas or in California, that for me to be able to walk into a taxed, a regulated, a legitimate business to purchase either edibles or ointments that I can apply to myself is not only convenient, but it's helpful for my health. And I really think removing the stigma that we have placed around marijuana or marijuana consumption is really important. And I don't ask you that out of self-interest. It's just I know that on the scale of where cannabis helps folks, there are other folks that are facing cancer or, other types of debilitating seizures or other debilitating illnesses or damages to their body where cannabis actually genuinely does help. And so I just thank you so much for hearing the time today. And I remind you that when you hear from folks that are impassioned, like folks like my brother, God bless him, he's passionate because he sees how cannabis has impacted individuals, and someone like myself who legitimately does everything I can to stay away from substance. When we're talking about medicinal marijuana, we're looking to really help people, and I hope that we can really consider that when it comes to proximity and where we're buying these things. Because in my home in Las Vegas, in the HOA that I live in, I can drive 7 minutes from my home. I can purchase a product in a very comfortable environment. I can drive back home and I can consume it in a safe way, and I have no fear of legal recourse. Where here in Sioux Falls, that same consumption, someone who's an honest, timely, caring community servant, to consume that here in the state at this point puts me in legal jeopardy. And the reality is, folks like me, we don't deserve to be put in that position, and each of you are put into a position of authority. And I hope you hear my words, I hope you hear my request, and at minimum, when you folks are thinking about these zoning laws or how these dispensaries will operate, that you remember that they're honest, law-abiding citizens that really do deserve access to medicinal cannabis. I really appreciate your time, and again, thank you so much, council members.
Thank you, Chris. Welcome.
Hello, my name is Alec Van Hove. Raised in Brandon, lived in Sioux Falls since I graduated South Dakota State. Go Jacks. And yeah, I wanted to also give my voice to this issue. I guess first of all, I just want to say I never thought this day would come in this state. I thought it'd be similar to the gay marriage issue where we would only be forced into it by federal law. So I'm glad we're actually to this point. This is also my first meeting attending one of these. I'm already picking up on the vibe that we like to reinvent the wheel, though. Not sure why that is. Starting things over from scratch. We're not the first state to do this, so I don't know exactly what studies were done or what other states were consulted. Meta studies to show ordinances that have been placed other places, other states, other cities, to show that these restrictions are unnecessary. First of all, I want to say it's not applying an even standard to businesses across South Dakota or Sioux Falls specifically. I don't see any reason why a dispensary shouldn't be allowed in the same place that there's a liquor store. I'm not sure what makes churches so special that We have to protect their delicate sensibilities. At my job, I can't apply an uneven standard to the quality checks that I do. If I do that, I'm going to lose my job. I got to bring this up because we're in a very red state, in a red city, where we love free markets. I mean, this is not allowing a free market. It's putting in some of the most restrictive ordinances, as Emmett mentioned earlier, in the entire nation. So I think that's a little hypocritical of the task force to try and put such stringent regulations on this. I'd like to bring up an example in Breckenridge, Colorado, where they tried to do the same thing. They forced the dispensaries on the outskirts of town. And one shop didn't want to do that because they had a great spot downtown. So they got around it by just not selling the flower in their location, but they still kept the location and sold all the other accoutrement, all the other paraphernalia. They still had the signs up. You could still see it. The children could see it. Elderly people could see it. People of the church could see it. It doesn't change anything. People don't walk out of dispensaries holding a giant bag of flour, waving it around so that the kids can see it. I still have to drive by bars and casinos to take my daughter to dance class. She doesn't go out drinking and gambling on the weekends. At what point does it come down to good parenting? At what point, if your kid says, hey, what's that business? Do you explain, that's a bar, that's a casino? Parenting. It's up to the parents to explain what that is. So yeah, my two asks then are to join in with Emmett and say, reduce those distance requirements. They're nonsensical, and to stop being scared. Thank you.
Thank you, Alex. Welcome.
Scott Harrisman, Sioux Falls. I can tell you why these people are here complaining about this is because we have a problem with our city government. They hate transparency and they're authoritarians. They were going to make these rules. We were not going to be participating in it, and they really don't care what we think, because they believe marijuana is morally wrong. That's the facts. You want to know why I know that's the facts? Because these meetings that they were having were done at 8 o'clock in the morning on a Wednesday or Thursday morning. How many of you who work could have made a Wednesday morning 8 o'clock meeting? None of you. They did that on purpose. They also did it at the library where you have to pay for parking, and there was no recording of this public meeting. So if they were so concerned about your opinion about this, wouldn't they have done the meeting at night? Wouldn't they have done the meeting here? Wouldn't they have done the meeting recorded? Wouldn't they have done the meeting and put it on YouTube? Nope, because they don't care about your opinion. They are going to get sued. I saw what they came up with. They're going to get sued. There's going to be petition drives, and this is all going to be overturned. It all starts with simple things, folks. We can come up here and we can complain all we want about how bad this is. We know it's bad. I laughed when I looked at it. 1,000 feet. Give me a break. You can't have a dispensary anywhere in this town. It was done on purpose. It's bad because they don't take input from the public, and they don't inform the public what's going on. They hide. They hide like little rats in holes and do this stuff. That's what they do. Because they know if they would have had these meetings out in the open, there would have been tons of pushback on this. And it would have been way different. That's why we're having this fiasco circus in Washington. They didn't want the January 6th commission because it would show exactly what happened. That's why these meetings were done in the morning, so none of you could be there or attend them. And now we have to come to this meeting and explain to them why it's so bad. I mean, they had to cancel a meeting yesterday because they couldn't even post a 24-hour advance notice on the agenda item. I just don't understand why they don't get it. There's just certain things that are just very simple in governing. You post agendas, you do things in public, you do things in open, you do things transparently. It's disgusting. It's getting worse and worse and worse and worse and worse. Pretty soon they're going to start having the meetings at 2 in the morning in the basement of City Hall. Probably wear hoods. Have little candles in the corner. Hope that nobody shows up. I mean, really. Was there any reason why those meetings couldn't be held here and recorded? No, there was absolutely no reason. The city council has control over these chambers. Did you know that? They don't have to go to the police. They don't have to go to the city clerk. They don't have to go to the mayor. They can have a meeting here whenever they want to. They have that control. But instead, they did it at 8 in the morning at the library you have to pay to park. Interesting. And for the other topic, I learned a lot today about the mosquito spraying. But I still didn't get the answer and the question that everyone's been asking. Why are we spraying pesticides on people in broad daylight? And I'm sorry, pesticides are not safe. It's not safe to be sprayed with a pesticide. If anybody tells you that, you're crazy. Ask all the people who got cancer from using Roundup that was supposedly safe. We still didn't get an answer. We got a lot of talk about a lot of stuff, but we never got an answer of why we're spraying people with pesticides in broad daylight. And we probably never will get an answer. That was all smoke and mirrors earlier to make us all feel better that we're protecting us against wet snow. We don't even really need to spray for it. They're doing all kinds of things that are environmentally safe. And you can protect your backyard with all kinds of things yourself. We don't really need to spray, especially this year. I think I've seen one mosquito all year long. One. It's just too dry. They're not around. Anyway, thank you.
Thank you. Others that would like to give input? Going once? Twice? If not, thanks for all of your input. And as a reminder, Planning Commission next Wednesday at 6 p.m. will be the zoning ordinance on the agenda.
Y'all come back now. Here.